Yeah. Okay. So our guest today, as I mentioned, is Carolynn Fowler-Smith, and she comes highly recommended as someone who has been a longtime practitioner of restorative practices, primarily with young people. She has worked in 3 different jurisdictions, so I think there's a good comparison possibility there, in the District of Columbia, in Prince George's County, and in Howard County. And I'm gonna not say much more, because I want to pass the mic to Carolynn to talk a little bit about the 3 programs that you work with, and what make these are all diversionary programs with young people, right? And so a little bit about what makes a program work well. And we're going to spend a lot more of our conversation, I think, not talking about the nitty gritty weeds of programs set up, but more about, from a practitioner's perspective, what makes it work well. And so let me just start with that question, if you would just do that, and then we can turn to some of the other questions that we have here.
So we're starting with the question of what works well, or me describing the programs that I'm affiliated with?
Describing the programs and then what makes a program work well. Yes.
Oh, okay. So as VA mentioned, I facilitate conferences in 3 jurisdictions. For Prince George's County, which was mostly, and all of them are cases that are referred to the programs through the Department of Juvenile Services. But in Prince George's, we had a grant, and the grantor wanted us to be more involved in the schools and with the SROs, and trying to get things resolved without them pressing charges against, the children that are going to court, and trying to be like mediators within the school. So we had what we call the Community Conferencing Center in Prince George's County, and I've been facilitating with them since 2015. And that was with the Department of Juvenile Services and recommendations from the schools, which were from elementary all the way up to high school, that we facilitated, incidences that occurred at the school. I first started facilitating, I first started off as a mediator. After I took the mediation course, I was doing mediations for the district court in Upper Marlboro, and I already told the professor that I took the mediation course from that I wanted to work with youth. So I tried out the mediation at the court, and it just wasn't fulfilling and self-satisfying to me. It was like, Judge Judy cases, somebody paid somebody to do some work and the work wasn't right, or somebody did the work and didn't get paid. So I don't know how it happened, but I found out about the restorative program that they had in Howard County. Now, what Howard County has, they do restorative reflections, although they do a lot of other programs, like they do community mediation, and they do re-entry and school circles. And I was involved with the restorative reflections and dialogues. And those were the cases that came from the Department of Juvenile Services. And with those cases, we met just with the youth and the parent. There was no complaint in there at all. When they come in to meet with us, they've been recommended from the court, and they have a list of things according to what the incident was or whatever, what they want them to do in order to have their charges dropped. So they might recommend, most of the time they recommend for them to come to the conference, and that may be all that they do. It may be restitution involved. They may want to do community service. They might want to write in a letter of apology or so, whatever, or an essay about what restorative justice and how the conference, affected them. So they have a list of things that they have to complete, and they give them a certain date for it to be completed by, and they have to go and turn that back in, have a date to come back to the court, and they assign somebody like with a clerk or someone at the court that they have to communicate with. Now with DC, I facilitate with Restorative DC. Howard County, I've been facilitating since 2014. Restorative DC, I've been with them since 2016. And again, their cases come from Department of Juvenile Services. They have some other programs that, they work with the school circles and in the schools too. And with those, the cases are, the juveniles are assigned to a social worker. So Restorative DC has a partnership with the Department of Human Services. And under Human Services, they have a program called the ACE Diversion. And the ACE Diversion program has a partnership with the Office of Attorney General and the Metropolitan Police Department. So those cases would involve the respondent, who was the youth, and the complainant. If we have information to get in contact with the complainant, or try to track them down, if it was a store or something like that, whatever, we can, go to the business and talk to the complainant to see if they want to be, participate in the process. So, and we work with the social worker. So the social worker is there the whole time during the whole process. So they participate, in the conference, and they're there for support, for the facilitator. The thing that I find that what makes the program work is that it gives gives the youth an opportunity to accept accountability, for what they did, and to understand how their actions, or to reflect on how their actions affect others and how they affected them. And just, giving them that opportunity to have a non-judgmental dialogue to talk about what happened, what they were thinking at the time, how they think and feel about it, at the time of the conference, what they've been thinking about since it happened, who's affected and how, and what they can do to repair the harm, to move forward and prevent something like this from happening again. So those are the most important, just giving them that opportunity to let them know that they have that they can talk about what happened and not be judged, not be penalized, that and just express whatever they feel like expressing about the incident. And to hopefully be in dialogue with the person that they caused the harm to.
Sorry. So a lot of people have experienced or talk about restorative justice as being transformative, both for the person who was harmed and for the person responsible for harm. Have you had experiences where that's the case that you can share with us? Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I've had so many incidences of it. I just tried to jot down some things so I wouldn't think that, I wouldn't rattle on about everything, that I've experienced, because I've been doing conferences, for years, and volunteering for as many as possible that I can, because I'm retired, so I have the time to do it, that I can fit into my schedule and not be overwhelmed, because they can get very emotional, and yeah, I mean, it's been, sometimes they work, you can't reach all of them. All the time you're not going to get the complainant to be involved. And that's where the restorative reflection comes in with DC, because you can't get the complainant. It's still not a loss to have a dialogue with the youth and their parent, about what happened, and get their perspective of the incident. But I mean, like several of them, like having one time, like the kids in DC have a lot of incidences. I know if you all ride the metro, there's always incidences occurring on the metros. They have a free card that they can get on when school is open, and they can go anywhere, they want to go, with the, on the metro and on the buses. So there's a lot of incidents, they meet up certain places, there's all social media, they meet up somewhere, want to have an argument or a beef or something like that. But it was this one incident that really stood out because the youth had jumped over the rail and didn't pay. He said he didn't have his card with him. The metro officer, just approached him, asked him, what's his name, his, parents' name and phone number, so whatever. Because what they do most of the time is try to contact the parent to come in and pick him up. But of course, you know, he's going to retaliate. He's not giving any information, and he gets a little belligerent with them or whatever. So they wind up arresting him. So after, you know, after the case was, I accepted the case. We had, Metro has what they call a youth liaison. And he's in charge of all of the incidences that occur on the Metro. So he gets a chance to review the footage and stuff and everything for all of them. So he, you know, I would go through him and he would contact the officer's supervisor and see, you know, if they wanted to, you know, participate. And the Metro officers were very, very good with participating in the conferences. And this officer came, we met at a library because that was more convenient for him because he had to go to work. But I really appreciated the fact that he came to the meeting in a regular suit and not his uniform, you know. So he was intimidating towards the young man. The young man had, he was living in a foster home. So he came with his social worker who was his legal guardian at the time. And that was something I didn't know, that when you're in a foster home, that your legal guardian is your social worker. And he was 17 years old. You know, seemed like a pretty nice guy, so whatever. But they had a conversation, and, you know, throughout the dialogue and stuff, and, you know, it was just so rewarding because he started opening up and talking about things that, you know, I never thought he would talk about. He talked about how he went to bed angry all the time and he was upset about this and whatever. And first time he didn't want to go to sleep at night and all these kind of things. And then the officer was just talking to him, and, you know, I just let them have their dialogue. And they were talking, and he was just telling how everything could have been prevented if he had just participated and not done this and that. So it wound up that, you know, the young man apologized to the officer. And he said, "I'm sorry." He said, "You know, it wasn't your fault. I was upset when I came into the station because I just gotten off the phone and was in an argument with one of my friends." So he said, "I apologize to you." And then they continued, you know, to talk or so, whatever. But just to get him to the point of being comfortable in sharing his story and his feelings to strangers and people that he didn't know was rewarding, was transforming enough to let him know that, you know, to know that he trusted us and it was the first time that he met us. And then for him to apologize and accept accountability for his actions. So, you know, that was a very, very positive note there. You know, I've had ones before where you have one young lady was bullying another young lady at school, and she was living with her father, and the other family came in, you know, a kind of uppity, like, you know, middle class family. And the mom was real snobby at the time or so, whatever. And she was just like, didn't want to hear this and didn't want to hear that until the father started talking. And the father told him, he said, "You know, I welcome whatever help that I can get, you know, whatever suggestions that anybody have." He said, "We've been homeless for a long time, you know." And after he started opening up, telling his story, then the other family started having empathy for them. And it wound up that they invited the young lady to come and spend time with them. You know, while the father was working or so, whatever, so you can come over for dinner. We'll help you with tutoring, with your classes and stuff like that or whatever. But just giving people an opportunity to hear people's stories and know what's going on, you know. And they come in with, you know, with one attitude, but then after they get the full picture, a perspective of what's been going on, it changes things around. I like to look at them as like miracle dialogues, miracle conversations. It's a lot of, you know, aha and yes moments and stuff. I mean, I don't know how many conferences I have cried at myself. You know, we take boxes of tissues for the participants, but I wind up using the tissues more than they do. But yeah, that was that. You know, that was a really good one, and I'm trying to use one from each program that I work for or volunteer for, because, you know, we get a little stipend or so, whatever. It's not like a job or anything like that. And The one in Howard County is just, totally volunteer. I had one young man in Howard County that was having problems with his girlfriend or something or whatever. And this was a young guy, and she kept coming over and coming over or whatever. And then finally he told her he didn't want to be bothered anymore. He shoved and pushed her or something. Anyway, he got some kind of assault charges. And so the mom was there protecting him, talking about, I told you not to talk to her. I told you not to do this. You didn't have a business in my house, this, that, whatever. And he said, well, you just let me talk, let me talk. So then he just talked about everything that went on with their relationship and how things happened and whatever, and how he felt badly about what he did. And then at the end, he said, you know what? I am so glad I had the opportunity to talk about this and get it off my chest because nobody wanted to listen. So those are, three, just three of the cases, that have really been really successful in transforming, for the youth and a lot of times for the complainant.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for those. It's striking that, one of the things we've been talking about sort of in theory is how restorative practices help increase empathy and understanding. And that you gave some examples of that. A very almost ordinary and some ordinarily miraculous way, I think, is maybe a way to put it. So on the other hand, restorative justice doesn't always work. And we talked a little bit about that. And so I'm wondering what experiences you have of times it didn't work and what you feel, in hindsight, what contributed to it not working, or what might have changed that.
Well, because sometimes you get people are pretty stubborn and they don't want to accept accountability for their actions. I had one young man who came and he snatched this lady's phone while she was walking in the park, and she identified him. It happened on a college campus. She identified him, the footage identified him. His high school was right next door to the campus. And she went over with the information and they were able to identify him at the school. And he came to the conference and just refused to admit that, it was him. And she told him, she said, she worked as some type of, she was a psychoanalyst or something or whatever, and she had worked with youth or whatever. She was willing to pay for a program for him to participate in, just to something that he was interested in. And she actually begged him, and then he still refused. So, she ended the conference and said, well, if he's not going to talk to me and he's not going to accept accountability, then we can't finish the conference. So most of the time, we don't get the opportunity to have the dialogue. And a dialogue is what's important. That's where the transformation comes, is with the dialogue. Families have come in. I've had times where I had to roll my chair back and whatever, because they want to get, start fighting. The dads wanted to fight one time in the school, and the SRO was there with a gun. And they still were going to go at each other. And I just rolled right on back. And then, and I just, at that point in time, you have to have enough gut to say, we all came here to resolve this. Do you still want to? So one day it left out and he never came back in. So we were able to continue on with the conference. So, you get people to come with some other type of agenda and not even want to concentrate and talk about what's going on or so, whatever. Then you get some youth that don't show up. You get some when you first start that won't respond when you try to call them, after several times or so, or whatever. And, but most of the time, once you can get people together and get them to start talking about it, 90% of the time, you're going to come to a resolution. And we always ask them at the end, even when they go through the agreement or the action plan, what their plans are to prevent this from happening again, how they're going to repair the harm. You still ask everyone, do you feel like this has been resolved for you? And most of the time they say, it's no point and moving on if they don't feel like it's resolved for them, because that's the point of being there. So, I could say that if we can get them together and have a conversation, whether they fulfill it afterwards, some programs, like in PG, they will follow up if there were action things on, they will follow up, to make sure that this was completed before they report back to the court. And Howard County, we just tell them that they showed up. We don't give any information about, if they want to write an action plan, they can, and they can take it back to court with them when they go. And the same thing in DC, they have an agreement. And if it's certain things that need to be fulfilled or followed up with, then the social worker will do that.
Mhm.
And I would say that like in DC with the ACE diversion, and not only do they cater to the youth, they cater to the family. Because it's a lot of times it's the family dynamics that they have to deal with. It could be housing, it could be, food, it could be furniture, it could be they deal with anything in that environment that they think that will help this child. So that's what I really, really like about their program. They are totally invested. They have other programs that they work with, like they get them involved if they think they like music. It was one social worker who was trying to get this young man in the DC Youth Orchestra, because most of the kids are pretty good kids. A lot of them are being influenced by their friends, or they have learning or emotional disabilities. And like I said, it's a lot of family dynamics that's involved. So, yeah, yeah, if it's, they'll get them involved in, tutoring. Georgetown has a university, has a free tutoring program, and they will come and pick the kids up and take them home. So whatever their needs are and stuff and whatever, they will, do their best to get them involved in the programs and stuff to help them.
Mhm.
And the other two have, programs that they can refer you to or whatever, but they're not part of the program that I volunteer with.
Mhm.
So
Okay. Um, do you have some lessons that you've learned in your facilitation work that you want to share with us? As you know, we're on the point of starting to figure out how we're going to implement.
lessons, to go into the sessions with an open mind, no expectations or anything, because sometimes I'm like, okay, this is not going to work, or this or whatever, and turns out a different way. We go through the prep calls with the people on the phone, and they'll be very open and tell you things or so or whatever, and sometimes they won't. Then you get to the conference and they tell you something completely different, and you can't call them out because your conversation you have with them is confidential, so you can't say, well, that's not what you told me on the phone. So, and you just hope that they're going to be open and honest. And then you have some that may not talk to you on the phone, but by the time they get to the conference and they feel comfortable enough, then they'll start talking. And that's another important thing, is that you got to, from the beginning, establish a trust with the participants. Even with the parents, you got to establish trust with them. You got to make them understand that, you're not there to decide who was right or wrong. You're not there to judge them or anything like that. You just want them to tell their perspective what happened, and to assist them with trying to, come up with a plan to move forward and prevent it from happening again. So, those are the most important things I learned, is just to go in with an open mind. Don't anticipate it to be a certain way, because it doesn't all the time. One lady was so upset and didn't see the footage, and she didn't see this, and she wanted to see the video, and you trying to say that my son took his phone in the locker room or whatever. But once she sat down and we listened to what the young man had to say about what happened in the locker room, and she sat there and she took a deep breath. And this conference only lasted just listening to the respondent. And she turned around, looked at her son, and she said, "You lied." She said, "Miss, where can I bring you the check to?" Case closed. So, just don't just go in with an open mind. Don't anticipate what's going to happen. Every conference is different. And then just to build that trust and that confidentiality. Let them know that they can trust you.
Mhm. All right. So I think now is a good time. Thank you so much, Carolyn. What we're going to do now is go around the group and take questions people have. I might have warned you all, but you know how this has been working. So that if you have questions for Carolyn, what we're going to do is we're going to collect them all up, and then after we've gone around the circle, Carolyn, then you can answer them. I'll take some notes if you want to take notes, or however, that would be fine. So and if you also want to if you want to put a question in the chat, you can do that as well. So with that, I'm going to start by passing to Mike.
Thanks, Leanne, and thank you, Carolyn, for the excellent presentation tonight. Just two quick questions. You kind of answered one. I love that you talked about the miracle dialogue and the aha moments. If there was a theme or a pattern that you could say, like, hey, I know there's not like any secret recipe and every conference is different, but if there was like a general theme to, you know, those aha moments or those miracle dialogues, I would love to hear your insight on that. And then secondly, if you could talk about where in the, at what point, who makes the recommendation? Did it come from the police officer? Did it come from the prosecutor or the judge? At what point was a recommendation made? But besides that, I think you had some great points, and thank you for being here tonight. So with that, I will pass with resilience over to Lauren.
Thanks, Mike. I had a question about not having the harmed party present and how that changes the dynamic. I know we've heard from a number of speakers that some programs don't handle cases where there's not a harmed party or a complainant. So how that changes the dynamic, or if the harmed party is a store or some like larger entity, not an individual. I also had a question, a more procedural question. The restorative reflections and dialogues, I can't remember which county it was from, but that's the one where they get referred from the court and they have a list of things they need to do. What happens if they don't comply with that? And I'm going to pass with sincerity to Parissa.
Oh, Parissa, your mic is off.
Better that way. I'm not sure that I had any questions other than, given that you've been doing these, the question that I get a lot is like, what's the 2-minute explanation or the 3-minute explanation of restorative justice? And I've struggled a lot with that. And so given that you've been in there, how would you describe that? And I guess how can we talk about RJ in a way that really conveys better how much it's victim-centered? Sorry, and I need to pass. I pass with authenticity to Maren.
Thanks, Parissa. Thanks, Carolyn, for the presentation. This is so informative. Really wonderful to hear from you. I don't have any questions at this time, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it along to Judge Lopez.
Good evening, Carolyn. Thanks for the great information. I have a few questions. How the program's been received by the community in your different jurisdictions? Is it Howard County, DC, and PG County? And how has it been received by law enforcement? And over the years, have you seen any changes in the community or the police action role in this process? And in the models that we've looked at, there have been other participants besides somebody yourself as the mediator or conciliator, the two parties and parents, et cetera. But are there any other participants from the community that are sitting in with you, or have you had any experience with that sort of a model? Whether it be people from the school, other students, that sort of thing. And this is kind of, I guess, been asked, but let me just see if I can put another twist on it. The action plans. No, I think it's been asked, so I won't re-ask it. So those are the questions that I have, and thank you again. Oh, and with curiosity, I pass to Najla.
Najla left, and because she was still having
Okay.
an issue with her computer.
All right, and I'll pass to Autumn.
Thank you, and thanks, Carolyn, for your presentation. I think I'll agree with Lauren. I would like to learn a little bit more about when the harmed person is not a part of it, and also like if whoever is making the recommendation for the juvenile to participate, and if all parties believe and think that this is a good case, but the harmed person is not on board, can you talk a little bit more about like who would reach out to that person, what those conversations would be to, you know, not obviously force them, but sell and explain why this may be a benefit, why this may be something that could be helpful. I was just interested and curious if that was your role or if that was the role. I'm a victim advocate, so would that be the role of maybe a victim advocate or someone else? And just expanding a little bit more about, is it just a straight no and that's it? Or if it's more of a conversation, rapport building, and who's doing that? And I pass with care to Devanshi or Candace if Devanshi's not here. Oh, yes, Candace.
Thanks, Autumn. And thank you, Carolyn, for sharing with us your experience. I had two questions, both about using volunteers. One was, what kind of training did you receive and or ongoing training do you receive to do the work that you're doing? And then number two, you mentioned that one of the places that you are volunteering is an unpaid position. It's strictly volunteering. And so I was wondering, if you find that the volunteer pool is able to reflect the community that's being served when you're relying on people who, you know, can give free time or have free time. So those are my two questions. And again, many thanks to you. And I'll pass with gratitude to Bob.
Thank you, Candace. And thank you, Carolyn. It's great to hear the stories, and both the good ones and the ones that aren't so good. Candace stole my first question, and that had to do with your training. You mentioned you took a course in mediation, but clearly you have skills that I don't think you learn when you take a course in mediation. So I'm wondering where else you got that. And then the other question I think was asked also before, what happens if a person who did some harm says, okay, yeah, I'll do this, but then doesn't, either walks out or just says, I'm not going to do it anymore. What are the consequences of that? And with that, I will pass with energy to Amelia. Who is not here? Oh, yeah, there you are, Amelia. But you're still muted.
Amelia, if you're there, your microphone is off.
I apologize. I am here, but I'm not able to contribute right now. I'm so sorry.
No worries. So then Katie, you're up.
Thanks. Yeah, so I had a question along the line, same, people are asking about the volunteer training. I know we were trained at one point in reentry circles, and they used a framework of solution-focused interviewing. And I'm wondering if in any of the programs they trained you in like interviewing techniques or any kind of framework for that. I'd be curious as to what that is. And I also was really, people had asked about the reflective dialogue versus the conference. And I'm just really interested in hearing, like, in terms of the process in setting up reflective dialogue and setting up the conference. You know, like, you make one phone call, is it one conversation with the people that are going to participate? Who's allowed to come as a supporting party, like to support the harm party and the party that caused harm? And like, how does that process different between reflective dialogue and like a full-on conference? Thanks.
Okay. So, Carolyn, a lot of questions.
I'm gonna try to put some stuff all together.
That
and
sounds
apply the
good.
programs a little bit more, and then that will answer a lot of the questions. Okay, so let's start with the first one with Howard County with the restorative reflections. So, like I said, the cases are referred to MCRC, which is the program I work with there, through the court system. So they refer the cases. They, you know, I guess, I don't know, they don't feel it's necessary to have, you know, they talk to the victim, or we don't call them victims, we call them complainants. The youth is the respondent. The person you all call the victim is the complainant. So, you know, they talk to the complainant or whatever, you know, at the court, and they talk to the youth at the court. And it's up to the Department of Juvenile Services to determine which cases will come to a diversion program, which ones will be, you know, diverted. So, you know, in lieu of persecution. And it all depends on previous records from the youth. And this is in all the jurisdictions, previous records and their age, because they have to be under 18. If they're 18, they're considered an adult. And it depends on what the, you know, what the type of, you know, what the incident was. So it's up to them to determine, you know, and just like the cases in DC are looked over, like the same thing in PG from the Office of Attorney General, and they're the ones that refer them, you know. In PG, there was a process where they would take certain cases and set them aside, and then the director, the two co-directors and Prince George's would go down to the court system and look through the cases that they referred to them and see which ones were, you know, compatible for community conferencing. Now with and the ones for DC are also looked at from the OAG office, and they will refer certain, you know, incidences or cases, arrests to the ACE diversion program, which is under the Department of Human Services for DC. So as far as contacting the complainant, I don't know what Howard County, the court system does all of the communication with the complainant. You know, if there's anything, if it's something restitution or something like that, they take care of all of that. All we do is have a conversation with the youth, you know, about the incident. So that's the only thing that we would do. You know, like I said, for them, they may have to do community service hours. They may have to pay restitution. They might want them to write an essay about their experience with the conference, or, you know, they might want them to write a letter of apology, you know, to the complainant. So we don't have any communication or any information. Matter of fact, we don't be getting any information about what happened. We just get the case, we do a screen, you know, they do a, the office does an intake process, which we used to do in person, but they do it online now, an agreement for them to participate that they go over with them and they have to sign. And we do a virtual conference disclosure with them now. And the facilitators just do a screening process with them, which is basically like talking to them about the process, telling them what to expect, asking some safety questions, make sure that they, you know, feel comfortable being in the same room with the person, you know, with the other participants who may be their parents or so or whatever. Because sometimes we've had incidences in Howard County where the parents have called the police on the child for a certain thing, like constantly stealing money or attacking them or something like that. So we have certain questions that we have to ask them. It's just like a screening process. And in Prince George's County, like I say, the cases are referred. The directors will go and choose the cases. They do the total intake process. So they will contact the family, make sure the family is on board and wants to participate, because if they don't want to participate as volunteer, we can't make them. And they will also contact the complainant to see if they want to participate. Now with Prince George's, if the complainant doesn't want to participate, then the case is sent back to court, and then the youth would have to go in front of the judge. And the same thing is if they had an action plan and they didn't fulfill it, like the co-directors will call, you know, during the due date and check up on and find out where are we with this action plan. And if it's not fulfilled, then the case goes back to the court system and they would take it from there. Same thing if it was a school incident and we went into school, that there was an action plan and it wasn't fulfilled, then it would go back to the school and the school would determine what the next steps would be. For DC, under the ACE diversion program, there's an action plan that's set up, and that's something that the social worker will follow up on. And I don't know what exactly they do or what their procedure is. Like I said, we only meet with them one time for the dialogue, but you know, they have to fulfill and participate in certain things. They have to participate in the conference because they signed a paper saying that they were going to participate. So if they don't participate, then, you know, it goes back to the court. The training, all of the programs that I've been involved with have had training and ongoing training. And we have what we call in-service trainings where, you know, facilitators get together and we have a theme that we work on, and we do a lot of role playing and stuff. There was a, you know, it was a training for the restorative reflection and dialogue. And the difference between the reflection and dialogue is the dialogue, you will have more than one family there. Anybody else who wants to participate in a dialogue has to get permission from the court system in order for them to participate, because they're the ones that's making the referral. For the community conferencing, during the prep that we do with them, which we call and talk to them, describe the process, you know, let them know so that, you know, have a dialogue with them, let them know that everything's confidential, and we will ask you pretty much the same questions, you know, when we have the conference, and, you know, just want you to feel prepared. Do you think you'll feel comfortable, you know, giving your perspective of what happened? If not, what can I do to make you feel comfortable, you know, and those sort of things. They can, and you ask them, everybody who's going to participate in the conference has to be prepped. And each person that you prep, you ask them, is there anybody that you would like to be there for support, or did you think should be there, you know, to resolve this incident? So I've had times where I've started off with 2 families, you know, maybe, you know, 4 parents, 3 parents, and then the school administrators are always there for the school ones that you have. I've had neighborhood advisory council members that want to participate if it was something that happened in the neighborhood. So anybody that they say that they want to be there, they have to give me the contact information, and I have to call and talk to them and prep them, you know, for the dialogue. So I've had ones that gone from 4 people that turned out to be 15 to 20 people by the time you finish. I'm like praying, like, oh my God, please no one else, you know, just say no, you know, just say no, nobody else. But yeah, they, you know, whoever they want to be there, they think should be, they could be, sometimes they want the grandparent there. Sometimes they've been assigned a mentor. You know, I've had pastors and ministers from the church, you know, somebody who works at the recreation center, you know, whoever they think that needs to be there. You know, some of them are in counseling, so they want their counselor to come. I mean, therapists. Yeah, so some of them did their ask, and the therapists were more than willing to come, you know. And that can be the same thing for DC. It's called a restorative conference in DC, which is the same thing as community conference. They just don't want to call it the same thing. I don't know. But anybody they want to be there for support, you know, will come. Now, like I said, we have a very good relationship with Metro Police Force, and we have a partnership with the Metropolitan Police. It's just kind of hard getting them, you know, because of their schedules and stuff. Their schedules are quite different than the Metro Police officers, you know. So it's kind of hard. And sometimes we will get a proxy person to come from the police department. If you can't get the actual one that was there, you know, and they'll come and talk about the harm, you know, and how it affects certain things and how it affects the community and their jobs and, you know, things like that. So other than the training that I've gotten for each one that I have participated in, you know, there's also a lot of training that comes through the mediation program, which is not for just for mediators, but, you know, for all types of conferencing and stuff like that, you know, how to, you know, respond to certain things and, you know, how to practice confidentiality and trust. You know, I've been to the Mennonite University. I've been up there twice to SBI for week-long classes on, because some of the agencies that I work with will pay for us to go. So I've been up there for classes, and it's just ongoing training. You know, we have, like I said, the in-service trainings, you know, the role plays, you know, just communicating with other people. It's ongoing training. I mean, you know, I got certificates in all kinds of restorative programs and stuff throughout the years. So, and then, you know, most of the skill, I would say, comes from my heart, because it's something that I really want to do and something I'm committed and embedded in. And it's just something that I have just gotten good at doing, you know, because it's something that I want to do and it's something that I love and something I think that is really necessary. You want to talk about the complainant not being involved. You know, we do, like I said, in Prince George's, the person doing the intake will be the one that will contact them. If they want to be involved, then we don't have the conference. And DC is the only one that's my job to contact, you know, the complainant and to have a conversation with them about the program, you know, what it means or so, or something or whatever. And quite a few of the people will say, well, yeah, you know, they're just children, you know. We had one guy at a store who said he didn't want to press charges. He, you know, was in some other kind of process. And so happened the detective that I had communicated with one time before for a case early, he said, well, you know, they had this restorative program for youth, and he referred it to him. And then that's how we got, you know, that case referred to us. So, yeah, I do, you know, I talk to them about it, and sometimes people will say, well, I don't feel safe being in the same room with them. And that's why I think it's a good thing with the virtual thing that we're doing now, because it's a practice maybe we could use in the future. So in cases like that, we try to have it somewhere where there would be security. You know, the most of our cases in DC are the Department of Human Services building on North Capitol Street. And there's, you know, it's a district government building, so there's plenty of security there. And it's guards and police officers, you know, everywhere. So, you know, that's a secure place. Sometimes we have them in libraries if it's convenient for the participants, if they don't have transportation, you know, get across town and, you know, ample time to have the conference. So those are some things, you know, people say, well, I don't feel safe in the same room, Or some people just say, well, I don't want to be in the same room with them. I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, you know. And you try to get that. And sometimes we've had them to participate over the phone. You know, they'll call in over the phone and have a conversation. It's not the same as being in the same room with them, but at least they can hear and have a communication with them. I think it's really important that they be able to, you know, face the person or talk to the person they cause the harm to. If not, you know, we try to get somebody as best as possible to talk about if they've been involved in that incident. You know, especially one time I was able to talk about something that happened because I had been a complainant in the same type of incident of somebody throwing something up against my window and almost busting the window. And I told them how scared I was and how much, you know, how I could have got hurt and what harm you could cause to someone. So even if you don't have the complaint in there, just having that one-on-one dialogue with them and getting them to understand, because what they don't, you know, young kids don't think that their actions affect other people. When you ask them who was affected, nobody. You know, how did it affect you? It involved, you know, I'm not really there. And then when you start talking to them about it, or you say, well, let's hear what your mom has to say about it. How was mom affected by it? You know, how was dad affected by it? And then we can go on to, you know, your siblings and whatever, you know, talk about how it affects the community, you know, like if, you know, calling in a bomb threat at a school, how much money it costs the district. You got police and detectives and the bomb squad and everybody coming. The parents got to be notified. The kids got to be taken out of the school got to be shut down, you know, just because you didn't want to go to class that day. And to see how, you know, it affects everyone. So sometimes, you know, I think sometimes just, even if it's good to hear what the complainant has to say and how things affected them or whatever, but sometimes you can just have a good one-on-one conversation with them and get them to understand, you know, that, you know, and accept accountability for their actions. Now with stores, if it wasn't, well, the store is the complainant. Most stores have a loss prevention manager. And that's the person who would represent the store for the conference. And I've had quite a few of those, you know, where there's been a store involved, especially the #1 store, Sephora, especially the one in Georgetown. You get people to come all the way from Virginia to come to Georgetown to go to Sephora and just happen to want to, you know, take some things. And so, yeah, you talk to the, you know, you talk to the loss prevention manager, and they may be the one, or either whoever was on duty at the time who noticed it. It may not be the loss prevention manager, maybe somebody, because they have cameras in the back, the people that are watching the cameras, of, you know, the customers in the stores. So yeah, we get people from the stores that participate in them also. I mean, even like large stores like Target, Macy's, you know, we get the loss prevention people. They are really, really, you know, good at participating in the conferences. I don't know, I'm trying to look here if there's anything else. The volunteer pool. We have a really, really stable volunteer pool for MCRC in Howard County. And it's a diverse pool also. We even have some student facilitators that we have trained. We have a couple of them because sometimes, you know, just to have somebody there your age or so or something like that, you know, to kind of, and sometimes I need them there to, you know, interpret the dialogue for me because I don't know all the slang, and I have to say, like, you know, what does that mean? You know, somebody say, well, they tried to bank me, and I'm like, rob you? You know, it means to jump me, you know. I'm like, you know, okay, so I don't know. So it's kind of helpful to have, you know, to have them there to, you know, to be, and I've worked with a couple of them before, and they're really good. I mean, they ask some questions that, you know, I didn't even think of sometimes, you know, because they know what kids' intentions are and what things are. You know, like one guy was following, he said, well, when you were following him, what was your instinct? Were you really trying to scare him, or did you want to hurt him, you know? And I didn't think about, you know, well, why? I thought I knew why I was following him, because he just wanted to taunt him, you know, but he was a little more specific about, you know, what was your intent? So, yeah, you know, and we had, like I said, it's a lot of diversity in age and race and whatever, you know, with the volunteers that we have. And we actually get more cases in Howard than we do anywhere else. And that may be because of the complainant is not involved, you know, but, you know, it's other things that, I mean, I don't know what they say or do to them, but by the time they get to us, I mean, they come in there, they scared. They want to know, how long is this going to last? How many times I have to come? I just want to get this over with. I just want to get it done. I just got so many more hours to do, you know, whatever. They want to get it done. I don't know if the parents, you know, put the you know, the scare in them, or if it was a court system. But they want to get it done and get it over with and move on. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else. The 2-minute explanation, no one ever asked me that about a 2-minute explanation for restorative justice. I just look at it as a transformation process to have a dialogue with youth to help them, like I mentioned in the beginning, to understand how their actions affect, you know, others, not just them, but how it affects others, how it affects the community, how it affects your parents, how it affects your siblings, you know, the school, everyone, you know, everyone that's around you. You know, it's not just you just want some excitement and want to do something silly, or, you know, and not think about what's happening. So they really get an opportunity to think about, you know, what they did, and, you know, that it, you know, it wasn't worth it. I know Michael asked me about what was a theme. We talked about where the recommendations. What would be a theme for the aha moments and stuff and whatever? And like I said before, I think it's like miracles, you know, because you don't expect it to be that way. You know, you expect, you know, something else, but that's like a miracle transformation. You know, you actually can reach most of them. You know, you actually can reach most of them if the dialogue is flowing, so as they don't feel like it's a I got you thing, or you did this or you did that, or so whatever. Not to make them feel like it's a punitive, you know, dialogue. Yeah, and they'll really open up and talk about things, you know. So. What do you do with cases with, what is that question?
I see that.
Cases with co-defendants, more than one respondent. I mean, we get as many as, the purpose of the conference is to get as many people as possible that have been involved in and affected by an incident. So if there are co-defendants, I mean, I've done some at schools where there's been a fight and it will be 5 respondents. You know, I've had some from thefts from stores when it's, you know, very seldom are the youth going to go into stores and steal by themselves. They're usually with friends. So, you know, everybody is there together. You know, we talk to them, and everybody is there together with family and support whoever else they want to be there with them. But like I say, it's volunteer. We can't make them. And if it's 3 people and only 2 want to show up, then the other person's case goes back to court. The other 2 don't get penalized just because the 3rd one didn't show up.
Another question came in on the chat. about the average timeline for a case from referral to completion?
From referral, well, once I get the case, I mean, now you're talking about by the time I get the case, or you're talking about the time it's given to the social worker or because the cases get backlogged in the court system. That's what takes a long period of time, is in the court system, is getting them, you know, sorted out and what's going to diversion and what's not going to the diversion. You know, I've had some that have been like 6 to 7 months old. I have some that would just be a month old. You know, we're catching up because of the pandemic, you know, with things in Howard County, because but we started doing virtual ones in Howard County much earlier because they wanted to keep moving on. So I've been doing those for a while. But
let's talk about when it comes to you. Yeah, by the time it comes to you.
If I get a case, they'll send me a thing on email and ask me I want the case. And this is only for the conferences, because with the restorative reflections, the date and stuff is already set up, and all I have to do is call and do a screening process, and it's usually done with within the date has already been set up, so all we have to do is screening process and do it. With the community conferencing, by the time when I get the case, I immediately start calling people that same day. So I like to get it done in, as soon as possible, because the earlier you contact them, the less anxiety they're going to have, the less they're going to complain about, why didn't somebody call me so-and-so time? Why are you just calling me now? So I start on immediately. And if I can get everybody to participate, but then I have to, talk to everyone, get a convenient date for everybody or so whatever. So most of the time I can get mine done within a week or two, if everybody's available. Like I told you, I'm totally committed to it, And I keep in contact with them throughout the whole process. If anything happens, I tell them keep in contact with me. If anything comes up or so or whatever, because anybody may have an emergency. We're only human, the social worker may, have an emergency or so, or the complainant or anybody, but I keep everybody informed as to what's going on. And that's how you build that trust and, with the participants.
I think there was another a question about how the program is received by the community.
Now, because I don't work within the community, and that would have to, as far as the most community I know would be with the social workers and with the police department and the metro departments, and even with the stores that we dealt with. The people say, I'm glad y'all have this kind of program. I'd be more than happy to talk to the youth, so I don't know how much that widespread community knows about restorative justice. I know I've talked, a lot of parents will say, I'm glad, you have something like this. But as far as, going to town hall meetings, I know I can speak for, because I live in Hyattsville, Maryland, and I know I can speak for, for the neighborhood advisory councils and stuff like that, whatever. They're very supportive of restorative justice. I mean, two of my neighborhood advisory council people, one works in used to work in the court system, and one worked in the mediation program for the district courts, and the other one used to be a counselor at one of the high schools here in PG. Then he went to Howard County. Now he's a vice principal at a school here in Prince George's. So they're, everybody, that I know and speak to or whatever, very in tune with, the restorative justice program. Like I said, we have a partnership with the police departments. So that's a community builder there. I mean, Attorney General Racine in DC is all for restorative justice. So is the executive Also Brooke, she's a restorative justice, promoter.
All right. I think that's close to all the questions. We had one more set of questions that related to the harm person, in terms of how we can talk about how restorative justice is centered on their needs, and then related to that, really, it sounds like there's a question around, I don't know, summarizing a little bit, how you build the rapport with the person who was harmed, and share with them how this process might be helpful to them.
I thought I had answered that, but anyway, we do a prep with them. We talk. I talk with the ones that I talk to, and I've only talked to the harm person for the cases in DC. So we just have we have a conversation, talk about what the diversion program is and stuff. How important their participation is. It's up to them if they want to participate. I let them know. And most of the time, like I said, they'll say oh, well, they're just a kid. I don't want them to get in trouble. But then I had one lady who was robbed and knocked down, and of course that was the one that said she didn't feel safe being in the same room with them, and we were going to try to have it at a police department in a conference room there or something that she felt comfortable, but the kids got arrested again, so therefore they were out of the diversion program because it was another incident that occurred. But yeah, just to have that conversation, ask them what do they feel, what makes them feel uncomfortable about it, and some of them will say they want to think about it, give them time, I send them information if they want to, send them an email, explaining the program and, how long, and they, we've been doing it or so. And there are times with the police department and what the ACE diversion program is all about. So it's more than most of the time with the, it's more than one conversation because a lot of times they just want to think about it. Sometimes you'll have some to say, yeah, of course, I don't mind doing it.
All right. I see one other question in the chat, and we're just about at our time to take our break. So this will probably be the last question. If you know about this, in terms of setting up these programs, do you know if there was resistance from law enforcement?
I wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't, and resistance, I mean, it was the Department of Juvenile, Justice that set up the program, who started the community conferencing? Did they get, feedback? I don't know. That's something you could talk to Dana about, maybe.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Or
Right.
Todd,
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And we've had some training. So just so the group knows, so Community Conferencing Center in Baltimore.
Oh, yeah, I took that training also.
Right. And they use a similar model in at the Key Bridge program that you just mentioned that Dana Coles runs in Prince George's County. So that's all the restorative.
And I think Carroll County, or is it St. Charles, has started a program down there also too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Okay, I think you covered a lot. I think we got all this questions.
On covering that much.
So really appreciate you being with us, Carolyn, and spending your time this evening and answering our questions and sharing about your experience.
Oh, Leanne.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Before I go, when you were in training SBI, there's a guy up there who's running a restorative program who used to be a police officer. And he has a restorative program. And so he said it took a while for them to get to the point where they are now, but they don't make any arrests.
Mhm.
I forgot what his name is. If you talk to Dana, you would talk, he could tell you about it or so, because he was in the training I was up there with on community, on building community, restorative justice in the community, you know,
Hmm.
how to build it within the community. And he was there.
And you said he was a police officer?
He was no, he was. I don't think he's a police officer now, because he went, he ventured out, and I think he started his own program.
I see. Okay.
I can't remember what his name was, but he was, you know, he was just a participant in the class, but you know, he shared that information with us.
All right. I'll start snooping around about that, because that sounds interesting.
It was
Thank
very
you.
interesting.
So, any last word that you want to say to us as we're closing out this part of the meeting? I want to let you have the last word.
Well, I just want to say that I appreciate all jurisdictions who want to try to set up a restorative justice program. You know, it's really important. You know that people get like I say, a second chance. You know, with youth, you know, most of the time it's, you know, family dynamics, you know, economics, peer pressure, social media, you know, that forces them to, you know, commit some of the acts that they do, you know, and that's why it's getting to be a lot more, you know, widespread. And they need people to talk to them and listen to them. Other than their parents, they don't listen to their parents, and the parents appreciate somebody else, you know, having that opportunity to talk to them. So I really appreciate you all having the interest, you know, in moving forward with this. And I wish you all the success. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
For taking the time and the energy, you know, to get the ball rolling.
Let's unmute ourselves. We're going to go to break in a moment, but you know, thank Carolyn for joining us, and yeah, and Carolyn, you're we're going to be taking a 10-minute break. So yeah, but just go ahead and unmute and say thank you. And
thank you, Carolyn.
Carolyn, it's great.
Thank you. Thank
Good to
you.
hear from you.
Thank you. All right. So
I'm not going to be coming back for the second half.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
guys.
All right.
Hopefully
Thank you
I'll see
so
you all
much.
in the future.
Okay. Take
All
care
right.
then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.